What are we doing here, Colm? Is this thing over?
Was there ever a real possibility of a long-lasting truce taking place between Colm and the Vanderlyn gang? Or was this event the brainchild of both Colm and Micah? Colm clearly had the law on his tail, with his men causing much more problems for the local town they camped next to. His men can be found beating people and setting up traps on the countryside with little accountability or any type of rule enforcement on Colm's part. Or this all could have been encouraged by him. Either way, Colm without any doubt finds himself in somewhat the same position as Dutch, possibly even being on Leviticus Cornwall's hit list with his name right next to his older brother in arms. I doubt the train the Vanderlyn gang stole from them in the opening chapter of Coulter was their only planned robbery that was fully intended to be carried out. I'm sure there were many more other hits on Cornwall's property, fueling Cornwall's rage and boosting the wave of funding he supplied to the Pinkertons. Micah, on the other hand, there's no secret his relationship with Arthur is fragile at best, fighting to be Dutch's #1 adopted son and command the most respect in the Vanderlyn gang, next to Dutch of course. Arthur's nothing more than an obstacle to what Micah wants most. Now, with Colm in his presence, it's time for the two of them to get what they want, and that's with Colm getting the law off his tail to buy a little time so he can disappear, or at the very least be considered less of a priority in the law's eyes. Micah, on the other hand, wanted to no longer be challenged, with full reign over Dutch and tailoring everything Dutch heard to ensure Micah got what he wanted with Dutch's unwavering support. Unwavering support that can only be achieved with Arthur gone, and if whatever they were after was retold in a way that at least sounded consistent with Dutch's teachings. Whatever the case, today I wanted to explore the events of the mission Blessed Are the Peacemakers. This mission takes place during Chapter 3 at Clements Point. The Vanderlyn gang finds themselves in the middle of using the Braithwaites and Greys' hatred against each other for their own personal gain, and a valiant effort to swoop the rumored Confederate gold out from under these families. The mission finds us right in the middle inside of the Vanderlyn camp, with Micah proposing something that's actually very inconsistent with his character.
Colm O'Driscoll, have you lost your minds?
You're always telling us, Dutch, do what has to be done, but don't fight wars ain't worth fighting.
They want a parley? It's a trap.
Well, of course, it's probably a trap, but what do we got to lose finding out?
I always found this mission a little odd, and how Micah acts to be suspicious at best. Never mind the meetup with Colm was only handled with Micah, Dutch, and Arthur standing over watching at distance, with no contingency plan made to involve any other gang members whatsoever should anything go wrong, but we'll dismiss this and chalk it up to Dutch swiftly making that decision on his own. Perhaps it was in a fit of agitation and doubt that he decided to involve as few people as possible that felt like a personal matter between two bitter enemies, completely disregarding all the bloodshed that did involve every gang's members over the years. But Mike is strangely optimistic about this. The man who, back in Strawberry, killed O'Driscolls in a drunken haze, or out of pure rage, or did it to just ingratiate himself more with Dutch for taking out members of his mortal enemy's gang. We'll never know the true reason behind all this, but it's hard to believe that the man who preaches cutting the weaker, lesser members loose from the gang and sees any kind of mercy as weakness is now begging Dutch to turn a blind eye and try to forgive a man for something he would never even consider doing. Micah, on the way to the meetup, even starts repeating the same sentiments Dutch always has.
I see all those mouths we gotta feed, and I dream too big, caring too much. That's my problem.
Caring too much? There's no such thing.
This is horse shit from both of you.
He says it all sarcastically, and is rightfully called out by Arthur. And we know through the events of the game, the entire Vanderlyn gang believed this to be a trap Colm later confirmed to Arthur to be true, yet it wasn't the type of trap anyone expected. The trap here was to capture Arthur so Dutch and the rest of the Vanderlyn gang would come to his rescue, only to be greeted by Pinkertons waiting for them. I've already established Micah and Colm's intentions and the mutual benefit of them orchestrating this trap together. However, there's one glaring issue here. It's not Micah that had originally presented the peace offering to Dutch, but Pearson. Pearson claims he followed some O'Driscolls into town, and it almost erupted into a fight until they started talking, and a possible peace was pitched. Unless these O'Driscoll members, for some odd reason, found it in the kindness of their hearts to not attack on sight, as they normally would if they were aware that this was a member of Dutch's gang they were dealing with, or maybe they took pity on Pearson or found him more amusing than threatening, and maybe they were smarter than the average O'Driscoll. It's really possible that there was a lot done within this actual interaction between Pearson and these O'Driscolls, or even through these members by chance hearing of Colm trying to plan something out, and these members, in an attempt to get in Colm's good graces, preemptively established this meeting through making contact with Pearson. While all of that is definitely possible, I think it's less likely. Given how Micah's acting specifically. What I believe to be the case is even this chance meetup between Pearson and the O'Driscolls was staged. In a previous video I talked about how Micah's unaccounted for during most of the chapters of 2 and 3. In chapter 3, the only time we really see Micah is during Blessed Are the Peacemakers and a short walk in a pretty town. Given how he acts in chapter 2, doing so as he pleases, and when things go south he returns to Dutch with some sort of peace offering or a gift to alleviate the wrongdoing he's done, I believe the meetup with Colm to be one of those instances, with an added benefit of completely removing Arthur. Perhaps he ran into a situation where he found himself at odds with O'Driscolls and decided to broker some type of deal within Colm. Maybe they hunted him down knowing that he was the one that enacted all the events at Strawberry, and they found him alone. Whatever the case, the law wants Colm, but they want Dutch even more. Dutch isn't an easy capture and undoubtedly won't leave the camp without any kind of decent level of protection, so even if he does leave camp and they manage to capture him, Arthur would easily be the head of a vengeful rescue contingent. So it's easier then to make Dutch come to us. Even if this was the case, I don't fully believe that Micah was willing to completely give up on Dutch and let that happen to him. If we look at the events of the end of Blessed Are the Peacemakers, when Arthur makes his way back into the Vanderland camp, there's almost no sort of action that's being taken by anybody within the camp. Even though Arthur himself said that if anything goes south or whenever this meeting ends, we will meet at the fork in the road. Micah and Dutch had to have known that Arthur obviously didn't make it. And we're not deep enough into the story to see any type of falling out between Dutch and Arthur, or see any reason for Dutch to give up on Arthur as he does in the later stages of the game. Besides, Hosea is still alive. I'd imagine Hosea and John would have definitely acknowledged that Arthur's been missing for a couple of days and riled up the rest of the camp into trying to look for him. So I don't actually believe that Dutch willingly ignored this. I think if any concerns or any problems came up to his mind, either Micah completely put them at ease, or Dutch was so involved and agitated from the events of the meeting with Colm that he just couldn't be bothered or preoccupied with what happened to Arthur, not really thinking anything more of it, and perhaps, he'll just see them later at the camp. But either way, I've always believed that this is the way that's how the meeting went. I think Colm fully intended to capture Dutch, give him to the Pinkertons, so that way he can escape and get some of the heat off him. I really think the way that he planned on doing that was using Arthur as bait. However, I don't believe Micah would have ever allowed Dutch to get himself captured. I think Micah would have let it be until Dutch became aware of the situation, and I think at that point Micah would have either convinced him that it wasn't worth it, or again, because Hosea and John are alive, with them very much advocating to rescue Arthur, I believe that Micah would have put himself at the front of a rescue mission and would have done pretty much exactly what he did with John at the end of the game. During the We Are Best Selves mission, when John is on the train and he gets shot, Micah claims that there was nothing he can do, that John died. And I think that Micah would have done the exact same thing here with Arthur. I think he would have done the absolute bare minimum, absolutely no attempt, and just let whatever Colm wanted to do with them completely happen. But let me know what you think down in the comment section about this theory. Do you agree? Do you disagree? And also, if you have a suggestion for any theories, feel free to post that down in the comment section below. Always taking recommendations, suggestions, anything you want to see. But until the next video, you guys be safe.